What's going on, family? Got a tri-stage white truck, new door, blend both ways, blend the fender, blend the rear door. Got a little repair inside the door jamb. Gonna be showing you a couple of tips and tricks that I've learned over the year or two that I've been spraying Spies Hecker. So join me and let's get this repair done. One of the first tips that I'm going to suggest, and kind of one of the first things I've learned, is using these anti-static control wipes. It's just made by Santara. The reason why I like these are mainly meant for like raw plastic bumpers that really create a static charge when you're prepping them. I learned this from a guy named PD Customs. He's on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. You got to follow him. Really, really cool cat. But PD told me that if you use these on a tri-stage white, before you wipe it down and prep it, like he uses his last, I believe, but I use my control wipe before I use my waterboard. But this is just another extra method to get all the extra smear and dirt marks off. You would be really surprised on how well something like this cleans an all white panel and gets rid of like all the smudges. And if you ever paint it white or a tri-stage, or if you ever paint it for a while, there at some point you're gonna leave like a smudge in a white panel, and it happens to the best of us. But like I said, these tips and things like this is just, you want to be proactive and not reactive when doing something like this. So we're going to use this Santara anti-static wipe. We'll wipe off our blend panels with this, and then like I said, it'll help with our smudges, and then we'll jump to some 210 waterborne cleaner. So when you're using these anti-static wipes, it comes really lubricated, so you want to go ahead and wring out any extra back into the package if you can. It just helps it dehydrate on the panel a little bit better, because this thing is soaked with chemicals and it's raining outside, so we just want it to dry up a little faster. So we'll just give this a good scrub, and then we can literally watch all the smudge marks disappear. The best thing about these anti-static control wipes, once you wring out some of that product in here and whatnot, and once you just fold it back up, you can just stuff it back in here. And I like to put a piece of tape on top, so then I can save it and reuse it for later. So you know it's no good when it's completely dehydrated, or when all the chemical has evaporated from the towel itself. All right, and once that's pretty much dehydrated, we're gonna go ahead and grab our microfiber rags. I like using these microfiber rags over traditional, like basically lint-free rags, because this is lint-free. You just throw these in the wash or buy some new ones. I like to soak in one rag down. This is Exalta 210 waterborne cleaner. This is what I use for my final white process. Like I said, one rag really wet. We're gonna wipe that panel. Since it's raining outside, it's gonna be pretty humid. The panel's gonna take forever to dry, so we can go ahead and do this whole panel before we wipe it completely dry. You don't wanna let that product evaporate on that panel. Sometimes you see where it'll evaporate at, or the white marks, like you know how if you wipe a wet panel, it'll leave like a streak. Once that evaporates, that streak can show up when you re-wet that with like base coat. So it's kind of weird. Only tends to happen when it's like super humid, and when the panel just doesn't dehydrate. So you got to be proactive and not reactive. So we'll just keep giving that a quick wipe until that product is just pretty much all gone. It might take a second, but after a while, it'll just disappear off all at once. All right, after wiping it down with waterborne, you just hit it with that tack rag and then your anti-stat gun. I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll jump right back to you when I'm done. All right, we got this thing all tacked off. We got it blown off, wiped down. We're pretty much ready to paint. Another tip that I've learned is always doing a sealer edge. No matter really what the color, black probably is not the biggest deal, but any other color, I always throw a sealer edge on that. And that's because normally when I paint these tri-stage white pearl panels, they always seem to be a little bit bluer than the rest of the car, meaning a little bit cleaner looking. And a lot of times that could be from like me not putting enough pearl on, or me moving too fast with my pearl, and things of that nature. So that just ensures that this all blue panel, that what it normally looks like, it will have like a blue tint on these edges of these, on the fender and the rear door, and that just ensures that this new door that I'm painting looks that much better. So I use my Jet 5500. This is Spies Hecker 5650 waterborne sealer. Again, I'll just do a sealer's edge, and I'll probably cover up these door jambs just to make sure I don't get any sealer on the inside of this door jambs, because I really don't want to get any base inside anywhere here except at the bottom, mainly because this isn't really how you're supposed to do it. They're supposed to take out the back door and do the whole aperture panel, but since everybody wants to save $1, you know, and nobody really wants to pay more, you got to do what you do. So like I said, I'm gonna just cover up these door jambs and then do a sealer edge with this light gray 5650 waterborne sealer. So I'm gonna put a piece of paper right here just to cover up this door jamb. Jet 5500 Luma 3 Sun Pro light. This is gonna be at 26 PSI because it's so humid. Normally I do it at like 24 PSI. Remember, you want to go up and down with your sealer. You do not want to throw that sealer down the panel because it'll look like dirt. And also, we're not throwing color all the way down there. We're leaving the color right here on the edges of this. All right, now that those sealer edges are done, we'll remove this paper. And we're removing the paper so we can seal our primer. All right, back over to the new door. Got some 1K etch over the bare metal spots. Throw some sealer over this, and then once that's dehydrated, we can do the base. All right, once our sealer's all dry, I like grabbing these green Suntory Tack rags, and I like wiping off any overspray. And again, if you have any sealer overspray that goes too far down the door and don't cover that with like base, you'll definitely see it later on when you pull it outside. So that's why we make sure we take our sealer up and down, and that's also why we make sure we wipe off our blend panels with our tack rags. And then with any type of wiping process on a panel, we like to use our anti-stack gun if we have one. Alrighty, I got some wet bed in my gun. I like using the slowest wet bed possible whenever I do my tri-stage whites, and that's just to leave the product as open as long as possible, just so any overspray or any flex or anything can land uniformly. If I have a problem besides having a blue door or having a too clean of a looking new panel, the other problem I would have is just modeliness in the pearl. And that's normally just from the pearl drying too fast, and then the pearl not being orientated. So like I said, I just like to go with the slowest wet bed. It doesn't really matter which gun you use. You just want it on there uniform and evenly. I like to take it up to like where my sealer's edge is. Then I do like so my sealer edge is like kind of like right here. Then I do a reverse like 3-step blend. I'll start with almost an orientation coat, letting just the pigment fall onto the panel. I'll come closer and start with almost like a blend. And then when I get right to this sealer edge line, I'm actually gonna be spraying just like normal, and I'm just gonna be throwing it basically down the panel from here. And then what that does is just gives a very, very thin transition all the way to a heavier transition, and it helped the blend a lot. I was having trouble with the Spies Hecker, seeing my blend, and ever since I did that, I haven't had a problem since. So let's get this door wet with wet bed, and then we'll grab our base. So once we got that uniform and wet coat of wet bed on there, we'll grab our base gun. This is a Luma 3 13 OP. Got the Sun Pro light as well, and we'll do that reverse blend. Start with almost like an orientation coat. We covered up a rock chip here with UV spot putty, so we're gonna go ahead and just start blending right there on that line. Spies Hector is wet on wet solids are 2 coats for coverage, so we gave that 2 coats. We'll finish off the door jamb and the fender, and then we can move on to the brand new door. For the rocker, you do the same thing. Take my wet bed up to my sealer's edge, start with a 3-step blend. All right, and then for the new panel, we just do wet on wet 2 coats, again with 26 PSI, Luma 3, 13 OP. For Pearl, I'll use the same gun. I'll just turn down my pressure to like 24 to 25, depending on how wet it is or the humidity wise. I'll probably turn it down to 25 just so I can keep the panel almost looking the same, the brand new panel and the blend panels. So we'll start a few inches out from where we started our white base coat and do the same thing, almost orientation coat. Come in closer, we'll do a blend light type deal, and then right when we got to where this where the sealer was, right where we blended the white heavily, we'll go ahead and blend out the pearl, and then we'll use an orientation coat to tie it all together. So we'll start with that wet bed first. And we're gonna take the wet bed up to where our sealer edge was again. So not only do you want to do kind of like a reverse blend, you don't want to blend in a direct straight line as well. It could be a little bit more noticeable, so you want to kind of blend at an angle. So now we finished our blend, and now from there we won't ever go back to that area, and we'll work on coverage. So metallics and pearls are 2.5 coats to 1.5 coats. The spray out I have was 2.5 coats, so I did 2.5 coats of that, and a half coat is just the orientation coat. So now we'll jump to the new panel. And this is kind of what you want it to look like. You don't want it to have any dark spots, any splotchiness, any modeling. Double check you don't see any dark streaks. And double check to make sure you have everything fully covered. I really like how this turned out. So I think I'm ready for the clear coat. For clear coat, we'll be using the Luma 3. This is their 1.5, the Sun Pro Light. And this is Spies Hector 8600 high solids, which is no flash 1.5 coats. So we'll go ahead and do that. Probably won't get back to you. Probably show you what it looks like when it's done, but probably won't talk to you no more. So I always appreciate you if you made it this far. Please make sure you like and subscribe.